Hey guys, on this episode, you're going to learn that everything you do, there's a cost of education. From Brad Price, owner of Creekwood Landscapes and executive pastor of Life Point Church. Stay tuned.
Hey, this is Liz, and you're listening to the SouthCack Syndicate Podcast.
Episode 27. My name is Jared Ketterman.
Kyle Voss in the house. Thank you, Liz, for the intro.
Yeah.
It's almost like she's in the room with us.
You're welcome.
She will be in a minute. Liz is working next door at Weston Co. Tap Room, and will be bringing us, or asking if we prefer a cold beverage.
A beverage, yeah.
So, that's good. It's a rainy day today. Interesting weather.
That's
almost 80 degrees today.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's almost going to be like a lake day today. Today's one of those days that fakes you out. You know,
this is where we get sick in the South.
Yeah, you go outside, you see what's the white trees around here that bloom right now?
Pear,
dogwoods.
Bradford.
The Bradford
Dogwoods,
pears.
and there's a cherry tree that blooms.
Everything in our house is starting to bloom.
But now you're like,
Even the
oh,
stuff
man.
we ripped up and burned. Like now
Grass.
spring is coming in.
Yep.
Grass is
My Georgia won't come in until June.
See, days like today is what gets me, though, because you're outside, you see stuff starting to bloom, you're like, dude, spring's here. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks, it's going to be freezing cold again.
Yeah. And then we all get the flu.
We might get a snow in March.
I hope not.
We did a couple
I
years.
hope not too.
We did a
but
couple years
yeah,
ago.
I mean,
This
set
year
up
we
for it.
literally have not had a snow. It snowed in Mountain Rest, but we did not have a snow. Today's guest is a decades friends of both of Kyle and I. His name is Brad Price. Brad, thanks for being on the podcast today.
thank you guys for having me. It's like a little high school reunion around the
It kind of is, ain't it?
A little bit.
Yeah.
And we all hung around different cliques. And here we are 20 years later. We'll say 20 years later.
That's good. That's good enough. That's good enough.
20X years later. And we've all come full circle. We've all lived our life.
Yep.
And we all went different directions when we graduated. And
That's right. Me and Brad hang out all the time.
I think it's cool. I think it's cool that here we are again, you know?
Yep.
And Brad, you ain't aged a bit, dude.
That's not true. That is absolutely not true.
So, Brad, tell us a little bit about what you do in I guess you do a lot of things. You're like us. You got your hands in a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything. So I've been in church work for a long time.
Yeah.
And I started a church about 10 years ago. August will be 10 years with a friend of mine. And one of the things we decided when we started that church is that we were all going to be bivocational is the real churchy word for it. But it basically means we're going to be diversified in income and providing for our families.
You're not going to make a living from the congregation.
It's
That's
not
correct.
church.
That's
you have a
correct.
full-time job, and church is your other full-time job.
Yeah, they're both full-time
right.
jobs.
There you go.
Let me, real quick, and I'm going to kind of play out the way that the church started, and you tell me if this is correct, but you guys were on bicycles at the gym.
So at the time I was working at CrossFit Proverb. That's where Blake and I met. So
Okay.
yes, go ahead. Sorry.
So you guys are like getting your calorie counts on these bikes, right, or something. I don't know how. I've never done CrossFit.
I hadn't heard this story. This is great.
And they get to talking, right? And you were at a different church than Blake, and right,
Right. We were crosstown. I was in Walhalla. Blake was in Seneca.
right. And so y'all get to talking, and you're like, somehow it came up where it's like, hey, we just need to start our own church.
Well, no, it really wasn't that. It really was the gym. So the CrossFit community is a really, really unique thing. And you're either in it or you're out of it, kind of.
Right.
Yeah, it's hardcore.
Yeah, CrossFit people, they talk about CrossFit. And people who aren't in CrossFit hate CrossFit people because all they talk about is CrossFit. So really it came down to Blake and I, riding those bikes, and we're watching another kind of class happen. And we got in this discussion about, you know what, this is what church should look like. So there were 2 or 3 old guys. There were a couple of, high school kids. There were, teachers. There were stay-at-home moms. And at the end of this workout, they're all high-fiving and talking about what they did and all this thing. So we were like, you know what, this is really what church should look like.
And I guess in you guys, I mean, we don't have to get too deep into it, but in your separate groups, the churches that you're involved with was typical like church stuff where they're arguing about the color of the carpet or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, we're missing the point here.
Yeah.
fellas.
So the common vein that Blake and I had is both of us were really trying to do the same thing in different places. Both of us kind of felt like God was, opening a door in our community for, this idea of a a real small group community church where it's not necessarily about the show. It's not about the Sunday morning deal, but it's about, just like a CrossFit class. So there may be 100, 150 members there, whatever it is. But that one class that you go to, that 4:30 class or that 8:30 class, whatever it is, they kind of become your family.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you're not there, it's a small enough group that somebody notices it.
You're in the trenches with them.
Yeah.
It's like Wednesdays at the tap room. If Skeet don't show up, everybody's like,
"Where's Skeet?"
Somebody's going to call.
He's doing a podcast next door.
You miss one day, it's fine, but you miss 2 days, and somebody's going to be calling.
Somebody's calling you. Where you at?
Knocking on your door. Are you okay?
Yeah, which holds you accountable.
Yeah.
That's
So,
awesome.
And I think the keys to success are, since you said accountability, are two things. I think it's responsibility and accountability.
Yep.
When you're in this huge organization, it's so easy to hide. And we could be talking about church. We could be talking about
we don't have to talk.
You talk about corporate America and that
Well,
same.
it's the exact same thing. You can just hide. There's not really any responsibility, and there's not really any accountability. So, what we really set out to do was do just that. We wanted to, grow the church as much as God wanted that to happen. But at the end of the day, we want to keep this small mentality where there's, responsibility and accountability to keep people engaged.
Yeah, and it works really well.
And so you went bivocational so that y'all started the church.
Yeah, well, actually, I was working at the gym at the time.
Okay.
And I kind of go through these 10-year cycles. So I was at the end of my gym time.
Days.
This is about halfway through the church. So we're about 5-6 years ago, something like that. And was just, ready for a change, ready to do something different. At the time, there was a dude that was cutting my Nana's grass. Actually, it's Kelly's Nana's grass. And he quit, and I just decided I could go buy a lawnmower. I could do that for her. I can handle that. I got enough time to do that.
Yeah.
That's right.
So went and bought the mower. I borrowed a trailer. I didn't even have a trailer. I borrowed a trailer. I bought a mower and a weed eater, from Jerry Vickery down there, and started cutting Nana's grass. Well, then I realized, I got all this money in this equipment, and I thought, I can probably pick up enough yards to at least
Pay for it.
At least pay for it. At the end of the day, that's really all I want to do is pay for it.
That's right.
So, one of the keys is, your brand is your quality, and your profit is your efficiency. So as quality kind of increases, I needed to be more efficient.
Right. Say it again.
I'm playing this back in my head. Your brand is your.
Right. So your brand is quality,
And your profit is efficiency.
and your profit's efficiency.
That's true.
So, I wanted to be more efficient. I had more phone calls. I, of course, had another job still working at the church, so I could only cut so much grass. So I started hiring some Clemson students. They were ag majors, but whether it's arborist or whatever it happened to be, I tried to focus on ag majors. But hiring ag majors from Clemson, and getting kids to come in that were good kids, qualifiable.
You vetted them.
People who knew how to, at the end of the day, get the work done. We weren't big enough for them to hide, so there definitely was responsibility and accountability.
There has to be so many. Look, me and a good friend of mine, Scotty Derrick, we have this conversation often. Scotty's been cutting grass in his own landscaping, grass cutting business for decades.
Yep.
So Scotty's been with me at the lake house over almost 10 years. Like, that's my guy.
That's right.
Right. And we talk, I was like, Scotty, you're back on the lawnmower? Because there was a short period where I had Mike or whoever it was. He was doing my yard under Scotty. Mm-hmm. And Scotty's like, I can't find employees. And these guys, they think they see the money that we're bringing in, the jobs that we're doing. So they go out and buy a little lawnmower and a trailer, and they have no idea how to run a business.
No.
Yeah.
And they'll last less than a summer. Because you see all these cards come out. Oh, let's do this lawn care. Let's do that lawn care.
Yep.
And they don't last. They can't be sustainable.
The summer months are good. It's when the off months.
Well,
it's when how you run your business matters.
Or you say, oh, I can cut that grass in that yard, and then you're overbooked.
Yeah.
And then it rains, and now you got to play catch up. Like, there's a lot to that business.
Yeah. Yep.
So good idea going after ag major people.
Yeah. So anyway, and through a mutual friend, picked up a very bright young man who had hopes and dreams and stuff he wanted to do. And as he kind of got rolling in this thing, he wanted to do more grading and that kind of thing. So
You wanted to up the ante a little bit.
he wanted to up the ante, less slinging mulch and, more digging in the dirt and that kind of thing. So really what I'm good at is applicable to, any business really. It's the marketing, it's the business management, it's, it's the supply chain, it's hiring good people. Again,
Reinvesting in the business, because you're really good at that. I watched you buy a hydro seeder, and then you bought two, and then you bought a piece of equipment. And you were like booking jobs with rental equipment for a while.
Yes.
And then once you book several, you're like, dude, I could pay for this rental equipment if I bought it versus rent it. So then you're buying them. Mm-hmm. That's where I see where you're really good is.
And didn't you look, I could be wrong here, didn't you look at buying a local landscape company?
I did. Okay. I had a guy who...
I'd heard that, and it wasn't from you or Kyle, but somebody else in the world mentioned that, but I don't know the details about it. But
yeah, actually, it's happened 2 different times where I had somebody approach me about buying. One was more of kind of a grass cutting business, and then one was a full on landscape supply and install business. So fast forward a little bit, you go through all the stuff that happened in downtown Seneca with the tornado. Oh, yeah. So we took equipment down there and just spent a couple of weeks. We made tons of good connections through that with other people who are doing same thing. One of the interesting things is we live in a pretty small town and everybody knows everybody, but everybody doesn't know what everybody does. And again, it goes back to quality. So there were a few people who were connected with us down there who said, gosh, these guys get after it. They do good work. So there you go. All of a sudden now I've got connections with some other people and it opened the door for some of that grading stuff. We made some connections with some builders and here we are today.
So acts of philanthropy, people, are not a bad thing.
Well, and the awesome thing for Brad was that he also had ties with the church, which was also in the middle of that too.
Yeah.
Y'all set that up as like main headquarters.
Yeah. We hosted Samaritan's Purse there at the church, so we were kind of a major hub for the volunteer effort.
Everybody worked that tornado.
Yeah, they did.
Megan, I mean, she woke up the next morning and went, have you seen Facebook? And I'm like, no, but it got pretty windy here last night.
Yeah.
I'm sure something happened, and we started looking at it, and she's like, I have to go. I went, go.
Yeah.
So she went and she stationed up at your parking lot actually and figured out what do I need to do. It's 3-4 days straight. She was just running back and forth.
I drove through the very next morning and it literally looked like a war-torn. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was telephone poles and stuff across the road. I mean, you couldn't get anywhere. You couldn't drive hardly through it. I mean,
it was our largest natural disaster in Oconee County.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
So Blake, Taylor, a couple of guys from church, they kind of live down in that area. And Jacob and I had left the shop and we were going to go, try to help them get out of their driveways, get a tree off one of their houses, that kind of thing. Well, we got to the Methodist church there downtown and that's as far as we could get. So we pulled the truck over, we unloaded the machines, we started unloading the machines. There were a couple of guys that we know go to church with us, live down there. So that's kind of how it all started. It started going from the Methodist church down that Adams subdivision, and we kind of made a big horseshoe and came back up. We hooked up with other grading contractors. We spent the first couple of days down there with everybody kind of scattered. And then, of course, me being who I am, I just kind of started walking around and going, we could probably do this a little more efficiently.
If we just team up,
of course.
So I pulled this guy who's got trucks. I pulled this guy who's got a loader, and you set them up in a hub somewhere, and then we just started kind of moving stuff around to them,
piling it in certain places and whatnot.
We ought to do a whole episode on the Utica tornado.
Oh yeah, that was the way it brought our community together.
It's an economic and a social impact.
Yeah,
huge
after a natural disaster.
What was it? What size was that thing?
Big.
4?
Yeah.
Did they rate it? Because just for reference, people are listening, whatever. Because
they cap it at 5, right? F5.
Yeah, and it's based on. I think the size of it was big enough to be classified as a big one. The wind speed wasn't there, or something along that. But it was huge.
Its destruction from an airplane was undeniable.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like God took his finger and went.
Yep.
But everybody remembers where they were.
That's right.
It's almost like 9/11 for this little small community, right?
That's exactly right.
And
Yeah.
Oconee wasn't the only one. It just kept going. Right?
Yeah.
But for us, it was a big deal. So they found the Borg Warner sign on the other side of Anderson, is what I was told.
Yep. Was it Anderson, Liberty, somewhere over there? But yeah,
it was long, far
it was
away.
a long way away.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. So, but I love hearing stories about people coming together and acts of philanthropy. Like we don't think, we just act in those terms. But still, it was positive because you help people out, you build relationships, you're networking. You don't even know it at the time because that's not where your brain is. Your brain is to help the community. But still, you gained business and you built up, right?
Yeah. So we hooked up with some people. Of course, we had a little bit smaller equipment, had some guys that we worked with who had the big equipment. Roll around a few jobs later and, they're like, hey, you've got the stuff to kind of get in here and do this. So we started doing tons of water mitigation around Lake Kiwi, helping people fix where, water would get around the house, driveways, that kind of thing. Building some small boulder walls and moving water around really was kind of the next step for us. It was kind of how.
So the guys that didn't have the little smaller equipment that couldn't get in those tight spaces, or maybe didn't even want to do it necessarily, they instantly started calling you and said, "Hey, I got a guy."
Yep.
So you're a water drainage expert.
Yeah. Yep. And
At that time.
Well, still. So now, kind of fast forward a couple of years, made some really good connections and relationships with some builders. And builders are great guys, and builders are really good at what they do. And a lot of them build, great quality houses. But shaping the property around this vision they have for this house isn't always their gift. So luckily enough, had a few guys who kind of trusted us to help with that. And, now we're kind of taking care of everything on the outside. You said something, timber to, do you remember what you...
You take the land from timber to home site.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great tagline for your business, and I'll license it to you.
Here we go, folks. Here we go.
But it is. When you describe to me exactly what you're doing today, you're taking it from raw land to home site.
Yeah.
Either way. So that's cool.
And we still do the remodel. The backyard remodel for me is really one of my favorite things to do. You have, let's just say, for example, I've got a project I'm working on now where it's a elderly couple. They had a pool. Kids are grown and gone. Decided they didn't want a pool. They had the pool filled in, and now they just have this big square backyard. What do we do with that? That's like a blank canvas for me.
That's right.
So I work with a good friend in the neighborhood. His name is Justin Robinson, owns Justin Robinson Designs. So Justin kind of helps me take what's in my head and put it on paper. I'm also not very much of a plant guy. The other thing that I did kind of moving along this path is I recognize people who are really good at what they do. For instance, Lance, Zone 7. For a couple of years, Lance did all of my plants because there's nobody better in the area at the time. Lance was the plant guy. Steve Bailey did some mulch for me. John Cothran did irrigation. I really leaned on those guys who were very skilled in those specific areas. Yeah. And instead of me trying to hire all these people to, there's a cost of education in everything that you do. So instead of
stop.
Okay.
Say it again.
There is a cost of education in everything that you do. And you may have gone to college, you may have paid for that education. You may have been working on Mustangs for a while. Like, here's a great example of that. So I've owned a few cars, owned a few Mustangs, done a little bit of work on them here and there, but not near as much as this guy and our friend Chuck. So I got this car now that we've been working on, and they're helping me on it. Very appreciative of that. And we had a little project we were doing, pedal swap, going from a automatic to a manual transmission. And I climbed under there one time and looked through this gob of mess of wires and wasn't sure what to do. So call Kyle. Kyle comes over. He looks around. He reaches in the toolbox. He grabs 2 box-end wrenches, 2 sockets, and a ratchet, and says, "This is all we need." He climbs in there, and in 20 minutes, he did probably what would take me 2 days because he's paid that cost of education.
Hold on. You paid the cost of education.
Yeah.
He said, we told the story before the podcast, and I was just enthralled with it. But it's like Kyle's done it a lot.
Well, what's funny about that story is he started talking about going to manual. I was like, "Yeah, dude, we can do this, no problem." And so he gets started on it. Well, that day that he's talking about, I went in there, pulled the steering column out, steering wheel, and there's all these wires. I start cutting stuff.
Oh, I bet Brad.
I'm like, "We don't need this." not throw it. We don't need this. We're going to fix this. And he's like,
Blinkers.
no, in his, I can see it in his eyes. In his mind, he's like, oh, I hope he knows where that goes back.
I'm gonna have to buy a whole new computer and wiring harness. What is he doing?
By the way, the car is not running yet, so we still have a little bit of
It's back.
Bit of
It's
work.
back to where I started this.
But you trust him because he's paid that
I
cost
don't
of
even know
education.
that, I don't even know
right?
that he trusted me.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
Did
absolutely.
he pull you by your ankles?
No,
out from
but I
under
could
the
see the
car?
look like, man, I hope he knows where that goes back. You know?
I'd have been the same way. I'd have flipped out. But I also know that I didn't pay the cost of education to learn how to work on cars. And come on.
Yeah.
My car breaks. Thank goodness for Chase and James, is what I say.
You just
There you
find,
go.
find
That's
somebody.
right.
So
Nah, what I knew about Brad, though, is I knew he wanted everything to be done the right way.
that's right.
And so we probably could have done the job a little easier. But I was like, nah, man, this is your,
Make
you know,
it right.
You want to enjoy this thing. You want it to be the way you want it. Let's just make it right. We pulled it all out.
So, and just like you said, you approach the car that way. When I walk onto a property, I do the same thing. So you may present a problem to me when I walk on the property, and it is a problem. But from the time I step on that property, I'm blazing a trail to fix it all while you're in there.
might as well.
As you go.
Which
Just
I think
get
is
it
what I
all-
told you. I said, hell, while we're in here, we might as well
Get it right.
clean up this wiring, clean up this, clean up that. So you do the same thing on the job site.
That's
Hey,
exactly right.
I could put you a little French drain right here and it's going to fix your water problem. But while we're in here, why don't we just do this, this, and this, and then it'll all be right.
And it'll save you from me having to come back
Yeah.
in 2 years or whatever.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So, you ever had a thought in your head it disappear? It's exactly what
Hey,
just happened.
well, I was going to say, what? Go ahead.
I just said it
Yeah.
disappear. I'll tell you what we're going to do then.
Let's take a break.
Take a break very quick. Guys, thank you so much. We got Brad Price in here. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Let's face it, shopping for insurance can be time consuming. When it comes to your auto and home insurance needs, make things simple and trust your Allstate experts. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your auto and home. Bundling saves money, sure, but it also saves you time. So you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact Clemson Allstate agent Shane Smith at 864-654-1047 today for a free personalized insurance proposal. Allstate, are you in good hands?
We're back with Brad Price, entrepreneur, youth praise and worship director, co-conspirator of a church.
Yeah, co-conspirator. Executive pastor is my title now.
Okay.
And I think that means that I take care of all the things that nobody knows has to be done and all of the
Parking
things
lots
that nobody else wants to do.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, so that's what that is. So I think we're having Blake come on another day, maybe next week. So what you're saying is you do all the work, he gets all the glory.
No, not
I'm just kidding.
not at
I'm
all.
just kidding.
Blake's not
at
a
all.
take glory kind of guy.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. If I had to say anything that's unique about Blake is his personality, because anybody else that would be in that man's position would handle it very, very differently. He's one of the most humble human beings on the planet. He knows what he's great at, and he does it, and he trusts the people around him.
Yeah.
And that for me is
I don't know
huge.
him.
You know what's awesome about this is like Blake's most likely going to be on next week.
Yeah.
And we're not talking church. We're talking investing.
Stock market.
Yeah, well, like we talked about earlier, we both have kind of other avenues.
Bivocational.
Yeah. And I love that about our church too, that it is bivocational. It's not like people trying to make a living on the congregation. We everybody's there.
We don't make a living on a congregation.
Some people do.
Well, shame on them.
You know what I'm saying? But
This is why I'm anti-church, to be honest about it.
well, then that's Life Point's perfect for you.
Yeah, we
no
are too.
doubt.
There's about 1,500 people every Sunday that are kind of anti-church, and we all get
let's
together and we talk about Jesus, and we don't talk about church.
Let me clarify, because I don't want you to think that I'm anti-Christian, because I certainly am a Christian and I love my Jesus. I'm just anti-corporate establishment church.
Yeah, and that's
Anyway.
exactly, we're probably in that same box.
Very
yeah.
anti-establishment. Very,
Everything
very much.
everything
Me-
goes
me
to
for sure.
Missions or whatever.
Sure.
So anyway,
So earlier, Brad, you were saying you could go into a customer's job site or backyard, or the client or the subcontractor or the contractor, whoever you're working for, and you can kind of see what needs to be done. Like you can kind of have that vision. And I do the same thing in commercial real estate. I can walk into a building the way it looks today, and I can see the way it's going to look in 9 months. after we get done putting our touch on it. And I think my point with that is a creator's mind, and there has to be a study on this. A creator's mind thinks differently because, Kyle, you do the same thing with fabrication and any kind of metalworking or cars. You do it on real estate or raw dirt. I do it in commercial real estate spaces. But a creator's mind works different than a college mind. Either you have a creator's mind or you don't. It's one of those things that
you can see the vision or you can't.
Can't be taught.
Yeah,
and I don't think it can be taught.
And
I think you just have it.
I kind of agree. I think you could probably teach. I think it could probably be taught. I think what the problem is most people don't have enough confidence in themselves to think that it's plausible.
Well, I'm going to go back to something I said earlier. There's a cost of education. Like we were all willing to miss a few times. We were willing to get it wrong few times to figure out that niche of how to get it right. And after you do it wrong a few times, you start weeding out that path and go, okay, I'm not going to go down that path again because it just doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't add up. It doesn't work. So.
It's so important because somebody came to me. Actually, multiple people come to me and say, "Tell me how to do this and how to do this. How'd you do that? How'd you do that?" And my answer,
I don't know.
My answer is always the same. It's not I don't know. It is I can tell you all my failures, which will help you more than I can tell you all my successes.
Have you heard that little playing on
cost of education?
Yeah, exactly.
That's your cost of education.
No doubt.
Have you heard that thing on Instagram where it's like you're like watching Instagram Reels or YouTube, whatever, and it's like this guy and he goes, "People always ask me, how'd you do that?" And I would say, "Hell, I don't know." Have you ever seen that one?
Yeah.
Everybody texts me and they're like, you need to use this on your stuff.
I wish I could scroll to a reel and a guy or the girl would say, either one would say, "Stop scrolling, go do something."
Yeah.
And that's the whole reel.
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you, and I love reels. I get value. I do. I
I need to make
valuable content.
Do I need to make one happen for SouthCack Syndicate?
Yeah, you bet. No.
Stop. Quit scrolling.
Stop scrolling.
Go do something.
Go do something. Look, so many times people confuse motion for progress.
Yeah.
And I think it's bullshit.
Busy work.
That's good.
Like, just because you're running around all over the place don't mean that you're getting anything done.
Well, and that's true.
Motion does not equal progress.
You're right.
Well, and it's just like sitting behind a desk. You know, you can sit behind a desk all day long, but you may not be getting a thing done.
Heck no.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, well, I'll go back to a book I read a long time ago called The 4-Hour Workweek. It's a great book.
That's an old book. That's old.
It's a Timothy Ferriss book. Yep. If you've never read it, read it. It's awesome. He basically talks about that exact thing. He's like, how is it that everybody gets everything done in exactly 40 hours in a week?
Yeah. Because they're not entrepreneurs.
Well, what he would tell you is if you only had 30 hours, you'd still get it done.
That's right.
And if you had 50 hours, it would take you 50 hours to do it.
That's right.
He's like, you use the allotted time you have to do something to do it. He's like, if you just shrink that down, you can get it done way faster.
Well, that was really our motivation for being quote unquote bivocational. At the end of the day, you know, when it came down to, you know, it was me and Blake and everything that had to be done. And I still had to figure out a way to feed my family.
That's right.
It's amazing how much you can get done in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Just like I said, you know, efficiency is your profit.
That's right.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about. So Brad is a organ collector, and not the kind of not human,
not the creepy kind.
I
where
need
it's
3
on
livers and 2
shelf.
kidneys to go, please.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the reason I like this story. I guess we're going to get into is that because it's so different and rare. Organs.
I'm familiar with it. It's a musical instrument. It's about the size of a stand-up piano, or sometimes the size of this room, depending on what Catholic church you walk in.
Correct.
Right?
So they fake it now, though.
Yeah, they do. So this idea of
God, how big is your house? How many organs do you have? Where do you put them?
Oh, well, luckily I work at a church that has 2 campuses.
There you go.
So yeah, I do have one at my house. I have one in each campus.
Sure.
I have one that's the travel organ that I use when Heath and I play out, or if we do an outdoor church event or something like that. And then I have this little bitty one that I kind of built and hot rodded, for lack of a better term. But yeah, you say organ, people have all kinds of thoughts in their minds. The first thing that most people think of are like the cathedral church organ,
Those pipes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and actually the organ is the whole room. Like the organ,
That's right.
it's all in the back, and the piece that you see is just the controller.
keys.
Right.
So back in the late 40s, early 50s, a guy named Hammond created what he called the first electric organ, and he was a watchmaker. He made mechanical watches. So he made this contraption. It's called a tone generator, and it basically works like a transmission does. So there's one drive shaft that kind of goes down the middle. It has 2 or 3 other shafts that come off of it, and it has all these different cogs, 91 or 92 cogs, I believe. Well, he set it up so that those things spin at a particular rotation,
Like per minute
or per second, however they do that all the time. Excuse me.
You're fine.
No problem.
I'll probably do it in a second. So
Yeah. So that thing is set up so that those things spin at the correct RPM all the time, and there's a magnetic pickup on each one of those little cogs, and each of the cogs are a different size, and there's different spacing between them.
So it gives to that vibrato
It does
of an
not.
organ.
It actually does not. I'll get to that in
then
just
why make them? Because I can see what that's doing, right?
All right, so where does tone come from? So tone comes from movement. A pitchfork makes a tone, right?
That's right.
No, not until you hit it.
Oh, that's
It's
that's
the
right.
movement. It's the movement.
you.
So
I got
tone's
you.
Vibration.
The vibration. The tone is in the movement in a pitchfork. So as these wheels kind of spin, when they go by the magnet, each one is spaced a certain distance apart, and it creates a tone. All right. So now you ask about the movement. So the movement actually comes from the speaker cabinet, which was created by a guy named Don Leslie, who is not affiliated with Hammond in any way, shape, fashion, or form. As a matter of fact, they did
I was
not.
gonna say this is my favorite part.
Yeah. You
This
like
is my
that.
look. Go ahead.
So the two guys really didn't get along at all. But the success of both of their companies was, in the 60s and 70s, the guys that took the Hammond organ and hooked it up to a
Leslie
speaker.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you've got
Holy
this,
smokes.
oh my gosh, magic.
The first song I ever heard of Leslie on, without knowing what it was probably "Lonesome Ornery Mean" by Waylon Jennings.
Yeah.
Waylon used the Leslie speaker a lot.
Well, so now you talked about movement and the Leslie speakers. Tell them why those two, why they're together.
Compatible.
All right, so go listen to a song like Green Onions. There's a song called Green Onions. If you listen to it, you'll know it. All right, so that's a Hammond organ with no Leslie. Okay, and you probably wouldn't listen to it a lot because it has a kind of a certain sound.
Sure.
But you put the Leslie on it and it just becomes magic.
Explain what a Leslie is.
So the Leslie speaker is a rotary speaker. It has one drum in it for the bottom speaker, and it has a horn in it for the top speaker. They spin in opposite directions. One of them is really big and heavy, and the other one is really small and light. So when you hook the thing up, it kind of spins at a certain rotation all the time. And much like when we live in Oconee County, so when Duke Power sends the sirens off, they move really slow, and you hear that pitch get louder and it gets higher in pitch as it comes to you. And as it goes away, it gets lower in pitch and it gets quieter as it goes away. Well, imagine ramping that up to, 60 times a minute.
Yeah. It's almost like, if you're watching on YouTube, it's almost like putting your speaker in front of this microphone and hitting play and watching that speaker just go around in circles.
Yeah. Really fast.
Yeah. So the first time I had a chance to plug guitar into a late 60s model Leslie, it was a cabinet probably half the size of this table and about this tall. And man, it changed my life.
Yeah, so
it was amazing.
What is it? Because it puts movement in the music,
So
right?
you strum, and it's like, brown, wow, wow, but it's not a whammy. Like it's different.
It's this
different.
it's this combination between tremolo and a whammy is the greatest. That's kind of if you could put those two things together, it still is not the same, but just because of the way it works.
And they're still relevant today, not just in organs, but in a lot of guitar players.
Yeah, well, go listen to pop music now, country music now, country music in particular. If you go listen to it now,
well, Brad, country music isn't country music anymore.
Well, that's a whole nother podcast.
Anyway.
We'll set a date. And we'll talk about what's country music these
You
days.
mean the pop music today? Okay.
Now, there's country out there. It's not played on the radio. That's what I think. That's my personal opinion. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, but you go listen to it. And if you've ever heard the instrument by yourself, I think what intrigued you is me and a buddy of mine, Heath, play out. It's acoustic guitar and organ. Well, when you strip everything else away and all you have is acoustic guitar and organ, that organ is a powerhouse.
Well, you're the bass, you're the rhythm, you're the band, you're the drum set, you're the
that's
band.
That's exactly right. There's
and Heath is the guitar accompanied with the vocal.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
There's a percussion kind of element to it. There's
absolutely.
bass. I play with my feet, and then you can do the different things with your hands. Well, when you strip everything out, you really got to hear kind of what that instrument does.
I think the mechanical part of it intrigued me too because it like spins fast and then slows down and then fast and it's cool.
Thank goodness for Mr. Leslie.
Yeah. And it's a game you play. Like if you leave it on slow all the time, you don't really notice it. And if you were to leave it on fast all the time, it would get super annoying. But it's this game. It's this game you play with creating interest with
creating.
There you
That's
go.
Right.
There you
creating.
go.
Yep.
I love it.
Dynamic diversity.
That's right.
That's the thing that makes music great is dynamic diversity.
So one thing, hold on, I want to tie in with this because this goes back to like kind of like business. So one day, Brad, I don't even remember what I was going to meet you for, but I was like, I think I had something of yours, and he was like, yeah, I'm up at the church, just meet me up there. And this is like on a Tuesday or something, random day.
On a Tuesday.
So I show up, there's nobody at the church.
It was probably raining.
It was just Brad, and I walk into the church, and I just hear the organ just blaring, he's rocking the organ in there, And he's just in there practicing, or I'm sure he kind of dialed it in or was doing something. He probably changed some mechanicals on it, was just testing it out. So I get in there and we get talking, and he starts telling me about the Leslie because I see it there and the organ and all that stuff. And he goes, yeah, man, you ever heard the quote, pulling out all the stops? You ever heard anybody say that?
Yeah, it comes from the organ.
It comes from the organ. I had no idea. Well, apparently on the organ, there's like, some kind of slides?
Almost like a choke.
Ours, there's slides. The term pulling out on the stops, if you look at a traditional like pipe organ, so what you see is just the control surface. And it basically comes down to airflow. So you have pipes, it's basically like a, flute, penny whistle, whatever you call it. But they range from, 16 feet, 32 feet, down to 2 feet, even smaller than that.
It gives you every note.
So the air runs all the time. And when you push down the keys, it opens the valves.
It's like a carburetor, Kyle.
Yeah.
So this would be like a vacuum system. Then you have all of these different pathways. So when you pull out the stops, it opens the opportunity for that air to flow down certain pathways. And there's a pathway down here that may have, high-pitched ones, some down here that have low-pitched ones. And when you pull out all the stops, it allows that air to flow through every pipe in the building.
Yeah, that's when you get
and
that.
Then, that's right. And when you press those keys down, then it opens that valve for those individual...
Shaking the shutters.
Yeah.
Those individual pipes that are in that key that you're playing.
Which makes so much sense because when you think about pulling out all the stops, like you're trying to have that wah moment, that moment where the whole building's, like you're pulling out all the stops.
Yeah. So, Brad, I want to ask you: do you have a favorite quote that you just go to?
Yes, I do. So this is probably. Do you remember the Musician's Den?
Yeah, the music store.
Yeah, the music store.
Yeah.
It's my buddy Chad Rawlings.
Yeah. Pause. I'm glad you brought this up. Is he still doing Black Dog? Custom guitars? Does he do any guitar work anymore, or is he just focused on audio?
He does a little bit of guitar work. I seen some in there when I was.
Well, he does some guitar work for some people. I don't know that he necessarily advertises that a whole lot.
He's done some for me. I got an amp I need worked on, but his work for me was just impeccable. Like I'm a huge Chad
Yeah,
fan.
he'd
too.
actually be
Yeah,
a good one to have on the podcast.
He would be
Yeah.
fantastic.
I love Chad. Like,
Because
he's so talented.
listen, there has been an ebb and flow to his industry that's probably higher peaks and valleys than any of
No
us have
question
ever
about that.
experienced. And that dude has figured it out.
Yeah.
He
So-
has done it.
So tell us about the quote. You're hanging
All right,
out
so
at Musicians
hanging
Den?
out at Musicians Den, we used to go down there, and just bunch of dudes just hanging around playing. I don't even remember what the context of the conversation was, but there was an old dude who was sitting there playing, and of course I'm demonstrating how great I really am.
Tell me you didn't do Stairway to Heaven.
No.
Free Bird. I hate going into the stores, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, no. We were all sitting around playing, and I asked some question or made some comment, and this old guy who had not said anything the whole hour and a half that we were down there raises his head up and looks at me, and he says, "You don't know what you don't know." And that's as true in life, in business, in whatever. You're blazing this trail, and confidence is one of the things that allows us to keep putting our one foot in front of the other. But the reality is, you don't know what you don't know.
That's true. Sometimes that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, I told Megan that one day during an argument that I don't recommend it. I was like, Megan, I didn't know what I didn't know. But it was the
Did it work, Megan?
Maybe we should have her. Maybe we should have her on the podcast.
Oh, she's been a repeat guest. We haven't talked the dynamic of marriage though yet.
But remember, before I didn't realize she was sitting on the couch back there. But remember, before the podcast, I said I'm still learning what my inside voice should be and what my outside voice should be. I should think that, but I should not speak that.
Yeah,
that's a big difference.
True that.
You don't know what you don't know, and that's absolute fact.
It's true. But I think that's good in two separate ways. Like if you know you don't know what you don't know, that's fine. But I also think that being naive is also a plus when it comes to venturing out to try something.
Sure.
Like if you knew how hard it was, if you knew the failure rate, if you knew how all the things that were going to be barriers to entry, you probably wouldn't do it to begin with.
Okay, so Brad, when you started your business, you're very successful in what you're doing now. Tell us what was your biggest hurdle and how'd you overcome it?
So, just like we were talking about, don't know what you don't know. I have a huge benefit. My father-in-law and I share a shop.
Okay.
Which is great. Where everybody's there in the mornings. Again, I got Jacob, who's a young guy coming up. Jacob's kind of running the operation side of that. I've got my father-in-law who has been doing this, since he was 17, who's, bumping 65 now.
He'd been doing it a minute.
He's been doing it a long time.
He knows a thing or two.
And, he's not one to necessarily tell us what to do or what not to do, but we've learned to, kind of use him as a resource to bounce ideas off of. And I'll tell you the biggest hurdle for me is growing up as a young adult, particularly in the church world. You become acutely aware of people in need. And really in the church world, you have, I don't want to say unlimited resources, but it's pretty easy to get people on board when you're helping someone in need meet their need.
You have a means.
You have a means to help meet that need. Going into the business world, that was probably my biggest hurdle, is when I would go somewhere and somebody, and it may be as simple as they're building a new house, they're running low on budget, but they still have to finish it. I really wanted to figure out how to get them everything that I could to finish that project to not only the best of my ability, but get them everything they wanted. Well, at the end of the day, you got to be careful that when you go through that process in the business world of helping someone meet a need, that you're not killing yourself in the process. Yeah. And listen, you can do that.
Musicians do it all. Musicians probably have that at the hardest, because I can't tell you how many shows I've played. Hey, we're having a benefit. Will you donate your band? You can literally donate yourself out of profit. And I'm all about philanthropy. I think it has a place in this culture, and it has to have a place in this culture.
Comes after profit, though?
No, I disagree, but I think that you also have to be smart. So some people tithe 10% of their physical dollar. Like that's what the Bible says we're supposed to do. 1 potato, you get 10 potatoes, you don't give one away, right? And I believe in that. But I also believe that your time has value too. So my 10 potatoes, I can donate one away as well and still be okay. So that's philanthropy, right? And I don't think that it needs to come above profit. We still go back to Tony Hsieh's quote of never chase the money, chase the vision, the money will come. If my vision is to build community, fill voids, do a great job, and some of that is donating my time, I'm not worried about the second piece because it will come. Yeah. Our donations will never go unnoticed. I've played benefits before where I'm just like, I'm so sick of playing benefits and booked 3 shows.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we're not in control here. Like,
yeah. And you know, I have given my time away for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. I still give my personal time away,
of course,
all the time. And you know, if you want more money, you can go make more money. But time is the most precious commodity we have.
Right.
Whatever age you're at right now, fellas, those days are numbered. Yep. You don't have any more days than you have at that particular age, and that's been very, very real with the Tommy's situation. Tommy Glenn's
I was just going to say
that. That hit me deep.
Mm-hmm. So we lost a pillar of our community last week, a personal friend to all 3 of us at this table, and countless others.
Yeah,
there's no question.
And, you know, like when you and I were talking earlier about, goofing off when I used to, I was in a band.
Sure.
We traveled around and played here locally. I got paid to do it kind of, but never really made a living doing it. But, at the point that we don't make
if you're a musician, you don't make a living.
Yeah. Whether it's $2 or $50, you're a professional musician, right? Well,
it wouldn't even cover my bar tab.
There were many times that was the case.
I would pay to play.
Not much would, though.
It certainly wouldn't cover my housing. And at a time when I didn't know who I wanted to be or I really didn't have a whole lot of place to go, Tommy let me stay at his house. And Tommy also knew that church was important to me. And Tommy was the guy who would set an alarm clock. If we got in at 3:00 on, Sunday morning, he'd set an alarm clock for 8:00 and come wake me up because he knew it was important for me to go to church, and it was. And so, he's also the guy that taught me how to weld, and I bought my first Mustang from him, and all that stuff. So that really has hit home with losing him.
He was young. He was 49.
Age, yeah.
So he was considerably young.
But yeah, for sure. And so I have I'm not going to call it a Tommy monument, but the last job that I hired Tommy to do was right next door in the next building. And I said, Tommy, I got a 2-story building. I'm cutting half the floor off and putting a loft above. I need a banister and a railing that I want it all out of metal and metal tubing. He was like, yeah man, we can do that. He rolls up here. And so I said, he measures, and he's like, okay, yeah, we can do this. I was like, great. So when we deliver the pieces, he's like, deliver the pieces? Nah, man, we're going to drop individual pieces off here. We're going to bring the welder inside, and I'm building it from scratch.
Yeah,
right here in Walhalla.
That's right.
And I went, you the man. You do what you need to do. And he spent, he knocked it out maybe a day and a quarter. Like, not even a full day. Because, it was just like by the time he got here, and he just worked, and I got some good pictures of him, straddling the railing and welding. One of the most talented guys and well-respected guys in this community. And
7 in the morning to 6 at night.
Hard worker.
If that's what it took. And I remember I took my car down there, the little red coupe, to get him to work on the exhaust. And he said, can you come Monday? I was like, yeah. I was like, I can come whenever you want to. How early do you want me to be there? And he said 7:00. And I said, in the morning?
In the morning? That's
real?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, which was fine. That wasn't a big deal for me, but I was shocked. And I said, wow, Tommy, that's great. And he said, yep, 7 in the morning, 6 at night, if that's what it takes. Yeah. And that, the one thing, that was 2-3 weeks ago, or maybe 4 weeks ago. But it was.
One thing I really liked about him was he was a get it done kind of guy. He didn't overthink things. I think a lot of people get kind of froze thinking about the process, right? He's like, no, you just start
Yeah.
You know, he probably took a measurement. He started cutting some tubes, and he's like, "Okay, now we're gonna do this."
And more importantly, you know, going back to kind of this business discussion, you know, Tommy was a welder and he fixed mufflers and that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, that is not what made the impact on the community.
You're right.
It was his means to connect with people.
You're right.
And I hope everybody that's listening will find their path to use whatever it is that you do, whatever it is that you're good at, to figure out a way to impact people. And at the end of the day, that's just more important than money.
You know, on this podcast, we talk a lot about ripples. Like, do something that inspires somebody else to do something. I think Tommy was one of those guys. Like, he inspired a whole generation of off-roading, rock crawling, right? Yeah. Like, single-handedly, he did that.
There's a sticker on that cooler right behind the camera there, and it's TGC.
Yeah.
Because when he started getting into the buggies, I think Chris May was like, "Hey, can you build a roll cage for me?" And he was like, "Yeah, I can do that." And he's like, "Why don't you just start your own company? Because you're the best there is."
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
There's no question.
So, I mean, the ripples that he created are unbelievable. I mean, you talk about from Chris May, who went to King of the Hammers and did all this racing, and then he made ripples himself. Like, Tommy started, you know, basically,
More people probably know Tommy outside of Seneca, South Carolina than Seneca, South Carolina knew Tommy.
Yeah, and you know, back in 1999 or whenever it was, I remember he had that convertible Mustang that I bought from him that had that roll cage in it. That, you know, they didn't have YouTube back then, so that dude, you know, he
figured it out.
Yeah, he looked at the mechanics of what it needed to solidify that frame and did it. And at the end of the day, it wasn't about building whatever it is he's building. It was about connecting with people and meeting the need.
That's right.
That person had.
Such a horrific loss to the community. What a great guy.
Sure. Yep.
right on.
Brad, where can people find you for your business wise?
So easiest way on the web is to go to creekwoodlandscapes.com. Business name is Creekwood Landscapes and Grading, but you can find us at creekwoodlandscapes.com. All the other info that you need's there. Of course, we're on the socials and that kind of thing. Trying to do a good job of, you know, one of the things that none of us, Jared, don't know you quite as well,
right? But
because we're so kindred spirits, I'm going to say that all three of us, one of the things that we don't do a very good job of is capturing what we do and putting it out there.
Yeah.
You know, you've told me before, that's the biggest fight of your job is to, you know, you go in and you see something needs to be done, you get started to do it, you get it done, and it's fantastic, and you look back and
document the process.
Yeah, you go.
Kyle's been telling me that literally years. He's
I
don't understand why you're not videoing your commercial demos, because people will learn.
Yeah, so we have all these great after pictures, but or I have before pictures of something, and we forgot.
I don't even have those.
We forgot to. You know,
that's literally why we started the podcast. So we're like, we need to document the process.
Yeah. And I'm a process guy. I mean, anything that takes a process, I am a fan of.
Well, and you know, if you do it one time and it's successful, then at least document it so you can do it again. It's you know, the keys to success are it has to be sustainable, has to be repeatable, and it has to be successful. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we kind of go through this path as creators where we're trying to figure that out. And what we do is we kind of bump that road like, okay, that one's a dead end. That one's a dead end. This one's good. And we're so excited when we find that path
for sure.
that we just run. We get to the end of it. It's like, crap, we didn't even talk about
I totally forgot about that
how
part.
that process was that we got.
You're right.
That's right. Well, listen, this has been a great episode, Brad. We really appreciate you. Brad Price. Give me the website one more time, Brad.
It is creekwoodlandscapes.com.
You're welcome back here anytime, my friend, because like all of our guests, it's hard to fit all this in around an hour.
No, right.
Like we're trying to get all your life into 60 minutes.
We could literally talk music for the whole time. Like when I talked Oregon, I seen a spark. Like he instantly was like,
when he mentioned Leslie, I'm like, oh yeah.
And then you get in there.
Yeah, I can get in there. It's like we could do different subjects.
That's
and folks, we came up with another subject that Kyle and I are going to do by ourselves one day, and it's going to be our top 5 albums. So stay tuned for that.
Interesting.
And then, you know, you guys that are listening, if there are little tidbits of stuff that you like, not on necessarily this one, but on any of them, let these guys know, and you know, we could pour out a little more content.
You can email us at
SouthCackPod@gmail.com.
You can find us on Instagram at
I think it's SouthCackPod.
Or SouthCack Syndicate. You type it in, you'll find the logo
right,
there.
that's
The
right.
logo right above Brad's
And
head.
hey,
here.
listen, and if you want to see our beautiful faces, just go to YouTube.
Absolutely. Guys, it's been a great episode. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Stay tuned.